Stop. Right there. Do you feel it? That trembling in your chest right now, that sudden weight pressing against your spirit like you've been seen, like someone just called your name from across eternity. You didn't find this message by chance. Heaven has interrupted your timeline. Tell me something. Why are you still here? After the betrayal that should have killed your faith, after the silence from God that lasted months, maybe years, after watching others get the breakthrough you prayed for while you sat in the ashes of your own shattered dreams? Why didn't you give up when giving up made perfect sense? Because here's what no one told you, chosen one. The reason you're still breathing, the reason your heart kept beating through nights when death felt like mercy, is because heaven gave you the hardest test of all and watched you pass it when no one was watching. Not the kind of test they write about in Sunday school. This was the exam from hell itself, the one designed to strip away everything you thought you were, until only the eternal remained. You thought you were forgotten, but you were being graded. Every tear counted. Every silent prayer was documented. Every moment you chose forgiveness over bitterness, hope over despair. Heaven was taking notes. And today the results are in. You didn't just survive what was meant to destroy you. You passed with colors flying. You endured without becoming bitter. You suffered without losing your song. And now, the spiritual realm is about to reveal why the pain had to cut this deep. Before we go further, thank you to every soul who has supported this message through Super Thanks. Your generosity isn't just donation, it's planting seeds of light for others drowning in their calling. Whether you give or not, your presence here matters. Your heart listening matters. If your spirit is trembling right now, if something deep inside is whispering, "This is for me," then speak up, type, "I passed the test" in the comments. Not for me, for heaven, for the spiritual realm watching you awaken right now. And what you're about to hear next will reveal why the pain had to be this hard, and what it's unlocking in the realms you cannot see. Because chosen one, your test is over. Your reward has just begun. The divine alarm is sounding. Are you ready to answer? Why are you the only one in your family who couldn't sleep through the storm? Why were you the one chosen to carry the weight that broke everyone else? Why did God allow you to walk through a valley so dark that even your own prayers echoed back empty? You've been asking these questions for years, haven't you? Lying awake at 3 a.m., wondering if you did something wrong. If you somehow deserved the isolation, the betrayal, the silence that stretched on for months like a spiritual desert. But what if I told you that every sleepless night was a sacred vigil? What if every tear you cried in secret was collected in heaven's bottle? What if your suffering wasn't punishment, but preparation for something so profound that only a tested soul could carry it? Listen closely, chosen one. You weren't forgotten, you were being watched. While others celebrated their easy victories, heaven was documenting your hidden endurance. While they posted their highlight reels, God was recording your midnight wrestlings. You thought you were alone in that dark season. But Scripture tells us in Job 23:10, "But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold." Gold, dear heart, not garbage, gold. You see, there's a test that heaven administers that's completely invisible to human eyes. It's not the kind they teach about in seminary. It's not the dramatic public trials that make for inspiring testimonies. Number this is the quiet crucible, the one that strips away everything you thought defined you until only your raw faith remains. Think about Job for a moment. Here was a man who lost everything. His children, his wealth, his health, his reputation. His own wife told him to curse God and die. His friends accused him of hidden sin. But here's what most people miss about Job's story. God never stopped watching, even when Job couldn't feel his presence, even when the heavens seemed like brass, even when his prayers felt like they were bouncing off the ceiling. God was there, observing, grading, measuring not Job's perfection, but his persistence. And that's exactly what happened to you. When the diagnosis came back and rocked your world, heaven was watching how you responded. When the person you trusted most walked away without explanation, God saw you choose forgiveness over bitterness. When your prayers seemed to hit a wall for months on end, The Almighty witnessed you keep showing up anyway. You didn't fail, precious soul. You just took a test that most never survive. But here's where it gets breathtaking. Your test wasn't random. It was customized, tailored specifically for the calling on your life. Because here's a truth that will shatter every lie you've believed about your suffering. God only tests what He plans to use. You weren't being punished. You were being prepared. The depth of your pain was directly proportional to the height of your purpose. The intensity of your trial was matched only by the magnitude of what God saw dormant within you. He didn't allow you to go through hell because He was angry with you. He walked you through the fire because He knew what would emerge on the other side. Think about it. When a swordsmith forges a blade, does he avoid the heat? Does he spare the metal from the hammer? He knows that only under extreme pressure and intense fire can ordinary steel become an instrument of precision and power. That's what happened to you in the hidden place. While you thought you were breaking, heaven saw you being remade. While you felt like you were losing everything, God was burning away everything that wasn't eternal. Your character was being forged in a furnace that would make you unbreakable for what's coming next. And oh, chosen one, what's coming next will require every ounce of strength that was developed in your secret season. You see, there's something about tested faith that untested faith can never carry. There's an authority that comes from walking through the valley of the shadow of death and emerging with your song intact. There's a depth to your prayers now that wasn't there before, a weight to your words, a stillness in your spirit that intimidates hell itself. Because you've been where most fear to go, and you came back with treasure. The scars on your heart aren't marks of defeat, they're credentials. The tears you shed in private weren't wasted, they were worship in its purest form. And the nights you spent wrestling with God, those weren't signs of weak faith, they were evidence of a soul that refused to let go until the blessing came. What if heaven was grading your silence? What if your stillness was worship? What if every moment you didn't curse God when you had every reason to? What if every time you whispered, "I trust you," through gritted teeth? What if every act of faith in the face of impossible circumstances was being recorded in the books of heaven? Because here's what the enemy never wanted you to discover. Your test scores are in, and you passed. Not just passed, you excelled. You showed a kind of faith that only emerges from the furnace. You demonstrated a level of trust that can only be proven in the dark. And now, precious soul, heaven is about to reveal why the test had to be this hard. You remember those nights, don't you? When the silence was so thick you could taste it. When you sat on the edge of your bed at 3 a.m., wondering if God had turned His back on you forever. When the loneliness felt like a living thing, crawling under your skin, whispering that you were abandoned, forgotten, left to die in the wilderness of your own making. But what if I told you that in those exact moments, when you felt most alone, you were surrounded by more heavenly activity than you've ever experienced in your entire life? What if the breaking wasn't abandonment, but assignment? Listen closely, chosen one. While you were dissolving into tears that no one saw, angels were taking dictation. Every sob was being transcribed. Every whispered prayer was being documented. Every moment you thought you were talking to empty air, you were actually giving testimony before the throne of the Most High. Psalm 56:8 says it plainly, "You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book." Did you catch that? Recorded. Collected. This wasn't casual observation. This was careful documentation. Heaven was building a case file of your faithfulness under fire. But here's where it gets mystical, beautiful, and absolutely shocking. While you were crying alone in your car, angels were writing with invisible ink on the walls of your soul. Words you couldn't see, promises you couldn't read, declarations of victory in a language only eternity understands. You felt broken, but they were writing unbreakable across your spirit. You felt forgotten, but they were inscribing unforgettable into your DNA. You felt finished, but they were penning just beginning over every scar. Do you understand what this means? Your pain wasn't random. Your isolation wasn't punishment. It was a sacred writing session between heaven and your hidden self. Think about Job, sitting in ashes, scraping boils with pottery shards, while his friends accused him and his wife told him to curse God and die. But what was happening in the unseen realm? Angels were recording every faithful word. Demons were being silenced by his integrity, and God himself was boasting about Job's character to the entire spiritual realm. "Have you considered my servant Job?" God asked Satan in Job 1-8. "There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil." That was written while Job was suffering, while he was questioning, while he felt abandoned. What if God is saying the same thing about you right now? Have you considered my servant sitting there listening to this message? Have you seen how they've endured without cursing me? Have you watched them worship through tears? Have you noticed they're still here, still believing, still breathing my name when they could have walked away? The enemy thought your breaking point would be your ending point, but heaven knew it was your turning point. Daniel 7:10 gives us a glimpse into this cosmic courtroom. The court was seated, and the books were opened. What books? The books of your faithfulness, the records of your resilience, the documentation of every time you said yes to God when everything in your flesh screamed no. And here's the part that will make your spirit leap. Those angels who were writing, they weren't just recording your pain, they were crafting your promotion papers. Every tear was evidence of your surrender. Every sleepless night was proof of your persistence. Every day you chose to forgive instead of retaliate was another line in heaven's recommendation letter. You thought you were being broken down, but you were being built up in realms you couldn't see. And now, right now, as you're hearing these words, that invisible ink is beginning to glow. The writing is becoming visible. The words the angels inscribed in your darkest hours are starting to manifest in your reality. Can you feel it? That shift in your spirit, that knowing that something is different now. You're not the same person who entered that trial. You've been authored by angels, edited by eternity, and published by the Almighty himself. The loneliness you felt, it was creating space for a kind of intimacy with God that most people never experience. The silence you endured, it was teaching you to hear frequencies that only the broken can detect. The abandonment you feared, it was actually preparation for a level of independence that makes you dangerous to darkness. You've been enrolled in heaven's graduate program, Chosen One. And your thesis? Written in tears, sealed with surrender, defended with unwavering faith. Now here's the question that will determine your next level. Will you keep reading those invisible words as failure, or will you finally see them for what they are? Your spiritual credentials, your divine degree, your certificate of completion from the University of the Crucible? The enemy wanted to use your isolation to convince you that you don't matter. But God used it to prove that you matter more than you ever imagined. If this is confirming something your spirit has always suspected, type 777, the number of divine completion. Because what was written in secret is about to be proclaimed from the rooftops. And now, that ink is glowing. The next scroll is being opened. What's written there will shock you, because it's not just about what you've survived, it's about what you've been authorized to do next. The angels are putting down their pens. Your documentation phase is over. Your deployment phase is about to begin. You've been asking the wrong question for months, maybe years. You've been whispering in the dark, God, why me? Why did I have to carry this much pain? Why did my test have to be the one that nearly broke my mind? But what if I told you that the intensity of your suffering wasn't evidence of God's anger, but proof of his trust? Listen to me carefully. Chosen One. The blacksmith doesn't put cheap metal in the hottest fire. He only subjects gold to the most intense heat because he knows that gold can handle what would destroy everything else. You think you were being punished, but you were being prepared. Let me ask you something that might shock you. Have you ever wondered why your pain felt so personal, so calculated, so perfectly designed to hit every weakness, every fear, every place where you thought you were strong? Because it was. Hell didn't design your test. Heaven did. And the reason it had to hurt that much, the reason it had to strip you down to your very bones, is because what God is about to place in your hands would have crushed the person you used to be. Think about Jesus in Gethsemane. Luke 22:44 tells us, his sweat became like drops of blood falling to the ground, the Son of God, bleeding from his pores under the weight of what was coming. If anyone could have handled pressure lightly, it would have been him. But even Jesus had to be pressed beyond human limits. Why? Because the salvation of the world required a vessel that had been tested at depths no ordinary man could survive. You are that vessel now. The sleepless nights when anxiety wrapped around your throat like a noose, that was God expanding your capacity for supernatural peace. The betrayals that felt like death itself, those were heaven removing every false foundation so your identity could be built on something unshakable. The financial pressure that made you question everything, that was the Almighty teaching you to trust when logic screamed otherwise. You thought you were dying, but you were being birthed. Job understood this. After losing everything, his children, his wealth, his health, his reputation, after sitting in ashes, scraping his wounds with broken pottery, he made a declaration that shook the foundations of hell itself. Job 23:10. But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I shall come forth as gold. Note silver, note bronze, gold. The most precious metal on earth, the one that only gets purer under fire. Do you see it now? The reason your test felt impossible? Because God wasn't testing you for survival. He was testing you for sovereignty. He wasn't preparing you to just get by. He was preparing you to rule. Every tear you cried in secret, that was liquid authority being formed in your spirit. Every night you chose to pray instead of curse, that was divine DNA being activated in your bloodline. But here's what will break your heart and heal it at the same time. You could have quit. At any moment, you could have walked away. God gave you 1,000 exits, 1,000 moments where surrender would have been understandable, even justifiable. But you didn't take them, not because you were strong enough, but because something eternal in you recognized that this wasn't just your story. This was preparation for someone else's miracle. The pressure you endured, it wasn't meant to break you. It was meant to remake you into the kind of person who could carry other people's breakthrough without collapsing under the weight. Romans 8:17 says we are heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ, if indeed we share in his sufferings in order that we may also share in his glory. If indeed we share in his sufferings. That's not conditional language, that's qualification language. Your suffering wasn't punishment, it was permission to carry weight others can't, to walk into rooms where the atmosphere shifts because you've been where they are and survived, to speak with authority that can't be faked because it was forged in fire. The enemy wanted to destroy you, but God used even the enemy's attacks to refine you. Every weapon that was formed against you, it failed, but more than that, it became a tool in the Master's hands to carve out space in your soul for glory. You are not the same person who entered that trial. The person reading these words right now has been processed, purified, and prepared for assignment. Can you feel it? That strange combination of weariness and readiness, that sense that while your body feels tired, your spirit feels dangerous. That's the mark of someone who has passed heaven's hardest exam. And now the grade is being posted, not on earth, where men measure success by comfort and convenience, but in the realm where angels have been watching your every response, taking notes on your character, documenting your faithfulness when no one else was looking. You passed, not with perfection, but with persistence, not with ease, but with endurance, not because you never doubted, but because you chose to trust through the doubt. Comment below right now. It was never punishment, it was permission. Say it loud enough for hell to hear you, because the enemy needs to know. What he meant for evil, God used for your elevation. But wait, because what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly what that permission has unlocked. You know what haunts you most? It's not the betrayal itself. It's the silence that followed. The empty chairs at your table. The phone that stopped ringing. The friends who became strangers overnight. You replay it endlessly, don't you? Wondering what you said wrong, what you did to deserve the cold shoulder, the way they looked right through you like you were invisible, like you never mattered at all. But what if I told you something that would shatter everything you think you know about rejection? What if those people didn't leave you? What if God removed them? Chosen one, lean in close, because what I'm about to reveal will turn your deepest wound into your greatest weapon. You see, there's a divine mathematics to heartbreak, a sacred equation that hell doesn't want you to understand. When God calls someone for his highest purposes, he doesn't just anoint them, he isolates them, not to punish, but to protect. Think about David. Before he could wear a crown, he had to sit alone in caves. His own brothers mocked him. King Saul hunted him. His closest friends abandoned him when the heat got too intense. But here's what they missed, and here's what you've been missing too. Those caves weren't prisons, they were classrooms. And God was the only teacher David needed. Every person who walked away from you was a divine removal, not because you weren't enough, but because you were carrying too much oil for them to handle. Listen to me carefully. Psalm 105:15 declares, "Touch not my anointed ones. Do my prophets no harm." God doesn't just protect you from evil. He protects you from average, from people who would drain the very calling from your bones. You thought they rejected you because you were broken, but they left because you were chosen. And chosen vessels make comfortable people very uncomfortable. Remember Ruth and Naomi? When tragedy struck, Orpah kissed Naomi goodbye and went back to her old life. She chose the familiar. But Ruth clung to destiny. She said, "Where you go, I will go. Your God will be my God." The difference? Orpah couldn't see past the pain. Ruth could see past the present. And you, precious soul, you're Ruth. You stayed when others scattered. You held on when letting go looked logical. You chose the narrow path when the wide road was calling your name. But here's where it gets personal. Here's where heaven leans in and whispers secrets that will crack your heart wide open. Those people who left, they weren't strong enough to walk where God is taking you. They couldn't breathe in the rarefied air of divine purpose. They would have suffocated under the weight of what you're called to carry. God didn't let them leave to hurt you. He moved them to save them, because the fire that refines you would have consumed them. Jesus himself said in Luke 14:26, "If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, such a person cannot be my disciple." Harsh words, number, holy mathematics. Because when God calls you higher, not everyone can make the climb. You've been crying over empty seats at your table, but God has been preparing a banquet in heavenly places. And the guest list? It's written in glory, not in grief. Every person who couldn't handle your process was a divine protection from settling for less than God's best. They weren't your people, they were your preparation. And the loneliness you've carried like a cross? That wasn't abandonment, that was consecration. God was setting you apart, making you holy, preparing you for encounters they never could have understood. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before God could use him, not as punishment, but as purification, not as exile, but as education. Joseph sat in prison for years before Pharaoh called him to the palace, but those chains weren't holding him back. They were holding him still until heaven's timing was perfect. And you, precious chosen one, you've been in your own wilderness, your own prison of rejection. But it was never about isolation. It was about installation. B10. God was installing something in you that can only be built in solitude. The oil you carry now, it's pure, it's undiluted. It hasn't been contaminated by voices that would have told you to settle, by hands that would have held you back, by hearts that couldn't see your calling. They didn't leave you. God removed them to protect the oil you carry. And now you're ready for the people who can handle your fire. The ones who won't run when your light gets bright. The ones who were designed to walk in divine alignment with your destiny. But before we go there, before we unveil who's coming into your life, you need to do something that will unlock the next level of your breakthrough. Write down the names that left, every single one. Then do something that will shock your soul back to life. Thank God for them. Thank Him for their rejection. Thank Him for the empty chairs and silent phones, because you passed the test because they left. And the question that will determine everything that comes next is this: are you ready to meet the people God has been preparing to walk with you into glory? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. While the world was busy watching your breakdown, heaven was documenting your breakthrough. While they whispered about your silence, the angels were recording your surrender. While they counted your losses, God was calculating your gains. You think nobody saw you crumble in that empty apartment at 3 a.m.? You think your tears went unnoticed when you couldn't even form words to pray? Think again. Heaven doesn't grade on applause. Heaven grades on ashes. And you, dear soul, you graduated summa cum laude from the University of Suffering, with honors, with distinction, with a diploma written in fire and sealed with your own blood, sweat, and sacred tears. Do you remember Job? Scripture tells us in Job 23:10, "But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold." Job lost everything. His children, his wealth, his health, his reputation. His own wife told him to curse God and die. His friends accused him of hidden sin. But God wasn't watching Job's losses. God was watching Job's loyalty. And just like Job, while they watched you fall apart, heaven recorded your faith as proof. Proof of what? Proof that love still exists when logic dies. Proof that worship still rises when hope falls. Proof that a human heart can break in two and still beat for the one who allowed the breaking. You graduated from the School of Sacred Sorrow, and your transcript reads differently than you think. Where you saw failure, heaven saw faithfulness. Where you felt forgotten, God saw fortitude. Where you experienced abandonment, the Almighty witnessed absolute surrender. But here's what breaks my heart, and what should ignite your spirit. You don't even know your own grade yet, do you? Let me tell you what heaven recorded while you wept alone. Every night you cried yourself to sleep, but still whispered, "Thank you, Jesus." Grade, A+. Every morning you woke up in pain but still chose to breathe another day. Grade, perfect. Every moment you wanted revenge but chose forgiveness instead. Grade, divine excellence. Every time you could have cursed God but blessed him anyway. Grade, beyond human comprehension. You think David became a man after God's own heart because he never struggled? Read Psalm 22:1. My God, why have you forsaken me?" Even the psalmist felt abandoned. But David's grade wasn't based on his feelings. It was based on his faithfulness through those feelings. Your pain wasn't punishment, beloved. It was your practicum. Your sorrow wasn't condemnation. It was your curriculum. And every tear that fell in secret became sacred ink writing your testimony across heaven's archives. The world measures success by visibility. Heaven measures victory by vulnerability. The world applauds performance. Heaven honors perseverance. The world celebrates those who never fall. Heaven crowns those who fall and still find strength to worship on their knees. You were graded in fire because fire reveals what's real. Fire burns away everything false and leaves only what's eternal. And when the flames finally died down, what remained wasn't ash, it was gold. Pure, refined, unbreakable gold. But the enemy doesn't want you to know your grade. He wants you to think you failed. He wants you to believe that struggle equals inadequacy, that suffering means rejection, that silence from heaven means you've been abandoned. That's the biggest lie hell ever told. The truth? The reason it hurts so much wasn't because God was absent. It's because God was so present that he felt every moment of your agony right alongside you. Isaiah 63:9 declares, "In all their distress, he too was distressed." Your pain didn't separate you from God. It synchronized you with him. And now heaven is preparing to release your results. But first, you need to understand something that will change everything. Your graduation ceremony isn't happening in front of people who knew your struggle. It's happening in front of the very ones who need to see that survival is possible. Your scars aren't marks of shame, they're badges of honor. Your story isn't a tale of defeat, it's a manual for victory. Your journey through hell isn't something to hide, it's something to herald. Because there's someone watching your life right now who's in the exact fire you just walked through. There's someone who needs to see that you can bleed and still believe. Someone who needs proof that you can be broken and still be blessed. You weren't graded in private to stay private. You were refined in secret to be revealed in power. The question isn't whether you passed the test, beloved. Heaven has already stamped your papers with divine approval. The question is, are you ready to walk in the authority that your ashes have earned you? Type "Heaven saw me" in the comments right now. Let it echo for the generations your survival is saving. Let it ring through cyberspace and into the spirit realm where angels are still applauding your faithfulness. Because what you're about to discover next will shatter every lie you've believed about your worth and reveal the shocking truth about why God trusted you with pain this deep. Listen, do you hear that? That sound isn't thunder. It's not the wind rattling your windows. That rumbling you feel in your chest right now, that's the sound of spiritual chains snapping, one by one, link by link. The very chains that wrapped around your voice, your dreams, your identity. They're breaking apart in real time. For too long, you've carried invisible shackles, chains forged in childhood wounds, chains welded tight by betrayal, chains that whispered you weren't worthy, weren't chosen, weren't enough. Every time you tried to speak your truth, those chains yanked you back into silence. But here's what hell never told you, chosen one. Every silent breakdown you endured was heaven's countdown. You thought you were falling apart. God knew you were being set apart. Every tear that fell in private was dissolving the spiritual locks that held you captive. Every night you cried yourself to sleep while the world slept peacefully. Those weren't just tears of sorrow, they were tears of deliverance. Isaiah 61:1 declares it clearly. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners. You've been that prisoner, but your sentence, it just expired. Do you remember the last time you tried to speak up? To share your heart? To defend yourself? And how quickly you were silenced? How the words got caught in your throat like they were being strangled by an invisible hand? That wasn't weakness, that was warfare. The enemy knew that if you ever found your voice, if you ever realized the authority wrapped around your words, his kingdom would tremble. So he gagged you with guilt. He muzzled you with shame. He convinced you that your silence was safety, but safety was never your calling. There's an angel standing behind you right now. Can you sense the heat, the electricity in the air? He's not there to comfort you. He's there to cut you loose. His sword isn't raised against you. It's raised against every lie that ever made you smaller than God intended. In Acts 12, when Peter was chained in prison, an angel appeared, and the chains fell off Peter's wrists. The angel didn't gently unlock them. They didn't slowly dissolve. They fell off. Instantly. Completely. Supernaturally. That's happening to you right now. Every chain of rejection, falling. Every chain of abandonment, breaking. Every chain that said you're too much, too little, too late, too broken, crashing to the ground like scrap metal. But here's the mystery that will shake you to your core. The chains weren't just holding you back. They were holding back everyone connected to your voice. Your children who needed to hear you speak life over their broken dreams. Your friends drowning in silence who needed someone to say, "Me too." The stranger who would pass you on the street next week and somehow feel hope just because you finally looked up instead of down. You thought your silence only affected you. But your breakthrough, it's generational. When Moses finally found his voice after decades of stammering excuses, he didn't just free himself from fear, he freed a nation from bondage. When David picked up his sling and declared, "You come against me with sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord," he wasn't just facing Goliath. He was facing every giant that had terrorized Israel's dreams. What giants have been using your silence against you? The giant of who do you think you are? The giant of nobody wants to hear what you have to say. The giant of you missed your chance. Well, chosen one, your Goliath just met your God. And in this moment, right now, as these words hit your spirit like lightning, something ancient is awakening in your throat. It's not just your voice returning. It's your roar. The same spirit that raised Christ from the dead is stirring in your vocal cords. The same power that spoke the universe into existence is unlocking the words you thought were buried forever. Romans 8:11 reminds us, if the spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead is living in you, he who raised Christ from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies because of his spirit who lives in you. Your mortal body includes your voice, your words, your testimony, and they're about to come back to life. But this resurrection isn't quiet. It's not polite. When God raises something from the dead, it doesn't whisper, it shouts, it declares. It proclaims with the authority of someone who has seen the other side and lived to tell about it. Every word you speak from now on will carry the weight of your survival. Every sentence will echo with the authority of someone who passed the hardest test and came out with their faith intact. You're not just getting your voice back. You're getting a voice that hell recognizes, a voice that makes demons flee, a voice that calls things that are not as though they were. Right now, speak this out loud. The silence ends with me. Say it again, louder. That is not poetry, that is prophecy. And the sound of your voice declaring freedom, it's creating an earthquake in the spiritual realm that will shift everything in your path. But the question burning in heaven right now is this: now that your voice has been restored, what will be the first words you speak into your future? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. What you've just walked through wasn't just suffering, it was surgery. Divine surgery performed without anesthesia, because God needed you awake for every cut, every stitch, every moment when He was removing what would have killed your calling. You think you went through hell by accident? Number. You went through hell by appointment. Because here's what they don't tell you in those feel-good sermons. God's greatest assignments are never given to the comfortable. They're handed to the burnt, the broken, the ones who've tasted ash and learned to find honey in the rock. Moses didn't get the burning bush experience while he was living in Pharaoh's palace, eating from golden plates. He got it after 40 years in the wilderness, after his hands were cracked from shepherding sheep, after his dreams had been buried in the desert sand. Exodus 3:2 says the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. But here's what will shock you. The bush was burning, but it wasn't being consumed. That's you, isn't it? You've been on fire for months, maybe years. The flames of betrayal, loss, rejection, financial devastation, they've been licking at your soul. But you're still here, still standing, still breathing. You weren't being destroyed, you were being prepared. The fire wasn't your enemy, it was your interview. And now God is about to hand you an assignment so weighty, so powerful, so earth-shaking, that He had to burn away everything in you that would have corrupted it. Because when heaven trusts you with kingdom authority, every trace of ego, every hint of selfish ambition, every whisper of compromise has to be ash. You couldn't carry what's coming next with yesterday's heart. But I need to ask you something that might cut deep. What calling have you buried? What assignment did you talk yourself out of because the fire convinced you that you were disqualified instead of prepared? Maybe it was that ministry you felt stirring in your spirit before the storm hit, that business idea that could have fed families, that book you were supposed to write, that healing gift you felt moving through your hands before life convinced you that you weren't worthy enough to touch others' pain. What did you bury in the ashes of your hardest season? Because here's the revelation that's about to shatter every excuse you've built. God wasn't just testing your endurance. He was testing your readiness to carry fire without being consumed by it. David didn't become king the day Samuel anointed him. He became king after years of running from Saul, sleeping in caves, leading a ragtag army of broken men. 1 Samuel 22:2 says everyone who was in distress, in debt, or discontented gathered around him. Sound familiar? God gave David an army of the wounded because only the wounded know how to fight for what matters. You've been gathering your own wounds, haven't you? Every betrayal taught you discernment. Every loss taught you what's truly valuable. Every moment of financial pressure taught you to trust God's provision instead of man's promises. You weren't just surviving, you were being trained. And now the training is over. Jeremiah 1:10 records God's words, "I appoint you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant." Do you hear that? Uproot first, tear down first, destroy and overthrow what was false, then build something eternal. That's what happened to you. God had to uproot your false foundations before He could build your true calling. But here's where most people miss it. They think the fire was the punishment. They don't realize the fire was the promotion. You're not the same person who entered that storm. Your voice carries different authority now. Your prayers move with different power. Your presence shifts atmospheres in ways that comfort never could have produced. When you speak about pain, it's not theory, it's testimony. When you offer hope, it's not wishful thinking, it's evidence. You've been to hell and back, and you're still praising God. That makes you dangerous to every principality of darkness. They tried to silence you, they tried to shame you, They tried to convince you that your pain disqualified you from purpose. But they made one fatal mistake. They let you survive. And now you're walking with resurrection power. Not the kind that raises the dead, but the kind that raises the dreams that were supposed to die, the callings that were supposed to be buried, the assignments that hell thought it had successfully aborted. Isaiah 61:3 promises beauty for ashes, oil of joy for mourning, garments of praise for the spirit of heaviness. But notice the order: ashes first, then beauty. Mourning first, then joy. Heaviness first, then praise. You've paid the price for the ashes. Now comes the beauty. You've walked through the mourning. Now comes the oil of joy. You've carried the heaviness. Now comes the garment of praise. But you have to choose to put it on. What assignment have you been afraid to resurrect? What calling have you convinced yourself was just wishful thinking? What vision did you bury because the fire made you forget that God doesn't give dreams to mock you? He gives them to manifest through you. The enemy's greatest victory isn't getting you to sin. It's getting you to quit before the resurrection. Moses was 80 years old when God called him back to Egypt. 80. Most people would have said, "God, I missed my moment. I'm too old, too tired, too broken." But Moses picked up his staff and walked back into his assignment with fire in his eyes and the authority of someone who had been tested and not found wanting. You're not too late. You're not too broken. You're not too old. You're exactly what God ordered. So I'm asking you one more time. What's the one calling you've buried? The assignment you've talked yourself out of? The dream you convinced yourself was dead? Type it right now. Resurrect it. Because the fire is over. The testing is complete. And God is about to show you why you had to go through hell to carry heaven. Your assignment is calling your name. Will you answer? Listen to me carefully. Chosen one. Something just shifted in the atmosphere around you. Can you feel it? That tremor in the spiritual realm? That sudden heaviness in the air? It's not your imagination. The moment you stopped questioning your identity, the moment you stopped apologizing for surviving what should have destroyed you, the moment you finally looked in the mirror and saw what God has always seen, everything changed. Not just in your heart, in the heavens. You see, there's something the enemy hoped you'd never discover, something he's been fighting tooth and nail to keep you from realizing. He didn't fear your tears. Hell has seen plenty of tears. He didn't fear your pain. Pain is his specialty. What terrified him? What sent shockwaves through every demonic realm was this moment right here, when you would finally know who you are. Because when a chosen one awakens to their true identity, the earth itself has no choice but to respond. Think about it. When Moses finally embraced his calling, what happened? The Red Sea split in half. When David stopped running from his destiny, giants fell. When Esther stepped into her royal identity, an entire nation was saved. But here's what they don't tell you in Sunday school. It wasn't their perfection that moved heaven and earth. It was their recognition. The moment they stopped seeing themselves through the lens of their failures and started seeing themselves through the lens of God's purpose. That's what's happening to you right now. You're not the same person who started listening to this message. Something deep inside has shifted. The old you, the one who questioned, who doubted, who wondered if maybe everyone else was right about you, that version is dying. And in its place, something ancient and eternal is being reborn. Your true self, the one God wrote into existence before the foundation of the world. And here's the shocking truth that will rearrange everything you thought you knew about your future. The very atmosphere around your life is now charged with divine authority. Ephesians 1-4 declares, He chose us in Him before the creation of the world to be holy and blameless in His sight. Not after you got your act together, not after you proved yourself worthy. Before creation itself, you were chosen before time began. And now that you know it, now that you've stopped arguing with heaven's verdict, the spiritual laws that govern this universe have no choice but to align with your awakened identity. Doors that were sealed shut are beginning to crack open. People who never noticed you are suddenly feeling drawn to your presence. Opportunities that seemed impossible are starting to gravitate toward you like metal to a magnet. Why? Because you're no longer operating as a victim of circumstance. You're walking as a child of the Most High God. And when God's children wake up, creation itself takes notice. But I need to warn you about something. This awakening, this recognition of who you truly are, it's going to make some people very uncomfortable. Your family might not understand this new confidence. Your old friends might accuse you of changing, of thinking you're better than them. Some will try to remind you of who you used to be, of the mistakes you made, of the times you fell. Let them talk. You see, Jesus faced the same resistance. When he returned to his hometown, they said, "Isn't this just the carpenter's son?" They couldn't see past his ordinary beginnings to recognize his extraordinary calling. Don't let their limited vision shrink your expanded reality. Mark 6:4 records Jesus saying, "A prophet is not without honor except in his own town, among his relatives and in his own home." Even Jesus had to leave familiar territory to step into his full purpose. And so will you. The old environments that once contained you can no longer hold what you've become. The relationships built on your brokenness will struggle to celebrate your wholeness. The systems that profited from your confusion will resist your clarity. But here's what I need you to understand with every fiber of your being. You don't need their permission to be who God created you to be. You don't need their approval to walk in divine authority. You don't need their validation to step into your calling. Because your identity isn't up for democratic vote. It's not subject to popular opinion. It was settled in heaven before your first breath. And no earthly voice has the power to veto God's decree. Romans 8:30 makes it crystal clear. And those he predestined, he also called. Those he called, he also justified. Those he justified, he also glorified. Past tense, already done, already settled, already sealed. The earth has to respond to who you are because heaven has already declared who you are. And now, as you step into this awakened identity, you're going to discover something that will take your breath away. You're not just carrying personal breakthrough, you're carrying generational shift. You're not just walking in individual authority, you're pioneering a path that others will follow. Every step you take in this new identity creates a blueprint for someone else's freedom. Every door that opens for you becomes a gateway for those behind you. Every mountain you move by speaking to your true identity shows others what's possible when they stop settling for less than God's original design. The enemy feared this moment, not when you cried, but when you knew who you were through the crying. Because tears dry up, but identity changes everything. So let me ask you something that will echo in your spirit long after this message ends. Are you ready to stop apologizing for taking up space that was always meant to be yours? Are you ready to walk through doors that recognize your spiritual DNA? Are you ready to speak with the authority of someone who knows they were chosen before time began? If your answer is yes, if something deep inside is roaring with recognition, then say it out loud. Say it to the atmosphere around you. Say it to every force that tried to convince you that you were ordinary. Say it, "I'm not confused anymore." That one line, that simple declaration, shakes realms. Because now that you know who you are, the earth has no choice but to respond. And what's about to unfold in your life will prove that heaven never makes mistakes when it comes to choosing its warriors. Chosen one, do you understand what just happened to you? You think you simply survived. You think you just endured another trial. But heaven sees something entirely different. Heaven sees the moment when a human soul became a sacred vessel. When flesh and spirit fused into something the angels themselves stopped to witness. You didn't just pass the test. You became the proof that God still moves in this broken world. Look at your hands right now. Go ahead. Look at them. Those aren't ordinary hands anymore. Those are the hands that held faith when logic screamed to let go. Those are the fingers that wiped tears in secret while your mouth still spoke blessings. You've been transformed into a living tabernacle, and you don't even know it yet. The ancient tabernacle in the wilderness wasn't just a tent, it was the dwelling place of the Most High. Every thread was woven with purpose, every curtain held significance, and when the glory of God filled that space, the very air changed. Moses couldn't even enter because the presence was so thick. That's what you've become, a walking sanctuary. A place where heaven touches earth. But here's what breaks my heart. Most chosen ones never realize their transformation. They walk around carrying the glory of God like it's nothing special. They speak words that shift atmospheres and think it's just conversation. They pray prayers that move mountains and call it just talking to God. When was the last time you noticed how rooms change when you enter them? When was the last time you paid attention to how people's voices soften around you, how their walls come down, how their pain starts pouring out without explanation? That's not coincidence. That's consecration. You are the proof that suffering doesn't have to make us bitter. You are the evidence that betrayal doesn't have to make us closed. You are the living testimony that God's people can walk through hell and come out singing. The scars on your life, they aren't marks of defeat. They're scrolls heaven is still reading aloud. Every line tells a story of endurance. Every mark declares his faithfulness. Your very existence has become a sermon the angels can't stop studying. Think about the diamond for a moment. It starts as carbon, ordinary, unremarkable, forgotten in the dirt. But under crushing pressure, under temperatures that would destroy almost anything else, under conditions that seem impossible to survive, something miraculous happens. The carbon doesn't just endure, it transforms. It becomes the hardest substance on Earth. It becomes something that catches light and throws it back in ways that take your breath away. That's your story, isn't it? You were ordinary carbon. Life applied the pressure. Hell turned up the heat. And instead of being destroyed, you became something rare, something precious, something that now catches the light of God's glory and reflects it back to a world desperate to believe again. But here's where it gets dangerous. The enemy knows what you've become. He recognizes the transformation, and right now, he's plotting to convince you it never happened. He's whispering lies about your inadequacy. He's pointing to your past failures. He's trying to make you forget that you carry the very breath of God in your lungs. Don't you dare shrink back now. Don't you dare minimize what heaven has done in you. Don't you apologize for the fire in your eyes or the authority in your voice or the peace that follows you like a shadow. You are not who you used to be. The old, you died in that test. The person who worried about what others thought, who begged for approval, who questioned their worth. That person is buried. What emerged from that grave is someone heaven recognizes, someone the enemy fears, someone the broken world is waiting to encounter. Moses didn't know his face was glowing when he came down from Mount Sinai. Exodus 34-29 says the Israelites were afraid to come near him because the skin of his face shone. He had no idea he carried visible evidence of encounter with the Almighty. You're glowing too, maybe not physically, but spiritually. There's a radiance about you now that others can feel even when they can't explain it. There's a weight to your presence that speaks before your mouth opens. There's an anointing on your life that breaks chains without you even trying. The question is, will you own it? Will you walk in the authority heaven has placed on you, or will you keep pretending you're still the same person who entered that trial? Because here's the truth that will either liberate you or terrify you. The world is watching. Other chosen ones who are still in their tests. They're looking for proof that it's possible to make it through. Broken people who've lost hope. They're searching for evidence that God still cares. A generation that's forgotten how to believe. They're desperate for someone who carries the real thing. You are their proof. You are the answer to prayers they haven't even prayed yet. You are the miracle they need to see with their own eyes. 1 Peter 2-9 declares it over you right now. You are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of Him who called you out of darkness into His wonderful light. You are not just chosen, you are royal. You are not just saved, you are set apart. You are not just forgiven, you are favored with a purpose so significant that hell trembles when you wake up in the morning. So stop hiding, stop shrinking, stop apologizing for the glory you carry. The test is over, the transformation is complete, the proof is undeniable. You are the living evidence that God still moves. You are the walking testimony that faith still works. You are the breathing miracle that love still wins. And if your spirit is burning right now, if every word is hitting like lightning in your soul, then don't stay silent. Let heaven know you're awake. Let the spiritual realm hear your declaration. Type, I am the proof, and let the heavens take note. Because chosen one, Your story isn't ending here, it's just beginning. And what comes next will make everything you've endured look like preparation for glory the world isn't ready to witness. Conclusion. My dear friend, as we reach the end of this sacred moment together, I want you to hold on to 3 eternal truths that heaven has spoken over your life today. First, remember this. You didn't just survive your hardest test, you passed it with divine excellence. Every tear, every sleepless night, every moment you chose faith over fear has been recorded in heaven's archives. You are not a victim of your circumstances. You are a victor crowned by God Himself. Second, understand that your transformation is complete. You are no longer the same person who entered that trial. You carry the glory of God now, in your voice, in your presence, in the very air around you. You have become living proof that God still moves in impossible situations. And third, never forget that your story is not just yours alone. You are the answer to someone else's desperate prayer. You are the hope another broken soul needs to see. Your victory is their invitation to believe again. You are not walking this journey alone. The same God who carried you through your darkest valley is still with you in this moment of triumph. He sees every step you'll take tomorrow, every challenge that lies ahead, and He's already prepared grace sufficient for each one. And beyond that, you have a community here. Thousands of souls who understand your journey, who've walked similar paths, who are ready to stand with you in prayer and encouragement. You are surrounded by chosen ones who recognize the fire in your eyes because they carry that same flame. Let me ask you this. If God trusted you with the hardest test and watched you pass it so beautifully, what makes you think He won't trust you with the greatest blessings He has planned for your future? Now, let us pray together. Father God, I place my hands on the shoulders of every precious soul listening to these words right now. You see them, Lord. Not just their victories, but their tender hearts that still carry the memory of pain. You know their names, their struggles, their secret fears, and their hidden dreams. Touch them right now with your healing presence. Let them feel your pleasure over their obedience. Let them sense your pride in their perseverance. Remove every lie the enemy has whispered about their worth, their future, their calling. Open doors for them that no man can shut. Release provision that matches their purpose. Surround them with divine connections and holy opportunities. Let your favor chase them down like rain in a drought. Heal every broken place in their hearts. Restore every stolen dream. Redeem every lost season. And fill them with such overwhelming peace that they sleep like children again, knowing their daddy in heaven is watching over them. Let them walk into tomorrow with their heads held high, not in pride, but in the quiet confidence of knowing they are beloved, chosen, and equipped for everything you've prepared for them. In the mighty name of Jesus, we declare it, we receive it, and we say amen. Before you go, I want to hear from you. In the comments below, share one word that describes how you feel right now after hearing this message. Is it hopeful, renewed, ready? Let us celebrate with you and pray over whatever you're feeling. And if this message touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear these words. There's someone in your life right now who's in the middle of their hardest test, wondering if they'll make it through. Be the messenger God uses to remind them they're not alone. Finally, if you want to stay connected to this community of chosen ones, make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. We're building something beautiful here. A family of believers who understand that our scars are our strength, our tests are our testimonies, and our God is still writing our stories. Thank you for watching until the very end. Thank you for opening your heart to receive what heaven wanted to pour into you today. And thank you for being brave enough to keep believing when everything around you said to give up. You passed the test, dear one. Now walk in the fullness of what that victory has unlocked. Until we meet again, may the peace of God guard your heart. May His joy be your strength. And may His love remind you every single day shows others what's possible when they stop settling for less than God's original design. The enemy feared this moment, not when you cried, but when you knew who you were through the crying. Because tears dry up, but identity changes everything. So let me ask you something that will echo in your spirit long after this message ends. Are you ready to stop apologizing for taking up space that was always meant to be yours? Are you ready to walk through doors that recognize your spiritual DNA? Are you ready to speak with the authority of someone who knows they were chosen before time began? If your answer is yes, If something deep inside is roaring with recognition, then say it out loud. Say it to the atmosphere around you. Say it to every force that tried to convince you that you were ordinary. Say it, I'm not confused anymore. That one line, that simple declaration, shakes realms. Because now that you know who you are, the earth has no choice but to respond. And what's about to unfold in your life will prove that heaven never makes mistakes when it comes to choosing its warriors. Chosen one, do you understand what just happened to you? You think you simply survived. You think you just endured another trial. But heaven sees something entirely different. Heaven sees the moment when a human soul became a sacred vessel. When flesh and spirit fused into something the angels themselves stopped to witness. You didn't just pass the test. You became the proof that God still moves in this broken world. Look at your hands right now. Go ahead. Look at them. Those aren't ordinary hands anymore. Those are the hands that held faith when logic screamed to let go. Those are the fingers that wiped tears in secret while your mouth still spoke blessings. You've been transformed into a living tabernacle, and you don't even know it yet. The ancient tabernacle in the wilderness wasn't just a tent. It was the dwelling place of the Most High. Every thread was woven with purpose. Every curtain held significance. And when the glory of God filled that space, the very air changed. Moses couldn't even enter because the presence was so thick. That's what you've become, a walking sanctuary, a place where heaven touches earth. But here's what breaks my heart. Most chosen ones never realize their transformation. They walk around carrying the glory of God like it's nothing special. They speak words that shift atmospheres and think it's just conversation. They pray prayers that move mountains and call it just talking to God. When was the last time you noticed how rooms change when you enter them? When was the last time you paid attention to how people's voices soften around you, how their walls come down, how their pain starts pouring out without explanation? That's not coincidence. That's consecration. You are the proof that suffering doesn't have to make us bitter. You are the evidence that betrayal doesn't have to make us closed. You are the living testimony that God's people can walk through hell and come out singing. The scars on your life, they aren't marks of defeat. They're scrolls heaven is still reading aloud. Every line tells a story of endurance. Every mark declares his faithfulness. Your very existence has become a sermon the angels can't stop studying. Think about the diamond for a moment. It starts as carbon, ordinary, unremarkable, forgotten in the dirt. But under crushing pressure, under temperatures that would destroy almost anything else, under conditions that seem impossible to survive, something miraculous happens. The carbon doesn't just endure, it transforms. It becomes the hardest substance on Earth. It becomes something that catches light and throws it back in ways that take your breath away. That's your story, isn't it? You were ordinary carbon. Life applied the pressure. Hell turned up the heat. And instead of being destroyed, you became something rare, something precious, something that now catches the light of God's glory and reflects it back to a world desperate to believe again. But here's where it gets dangerous. The enemy knows what you've become. He recognizes the transformation, and right now, he's plotting to convince you it never happened. He's whispering lies about your inadequacy. He's pointing to your past failures. He's trying to make you forget that you carry the very breath of God in your lungs. Don't you dare shrink back now. Don't you dare minimize what heaven has done in you. Don't you apologize for the fire in your eyes or the authority in your voice or the peace that follows you like a shadow. You are not who you used to be. The old, you died in that test. The person who worried about what others thought, who begged for approval, who questioned their worth. That person is buried. What emerged from that grave is someone heaven recognizes, someone the enemy fears, someone the broken world is waiting to encounter. Moses didn't know his face was glowing when he came down from Mount Sinai. Exodus 34-29 says the Israelites were afraid to come near him because the skin of his face shone. He had no idea he carried visible evidence of encounter with the Almighty. You're glowing too, maybe not physically, but spiritually. There's a radiance about you now that others can feel even when they can't explain it. There's a weight to your presence that speaks before your mouth opens. There's an anointing on your life that breaks chains without you even trying. The question is, will you own it? Will you walk in the authority heaven has placed on you, or will you keep pretending you're still the same person who entered that trial? Because here's the truth that will either liberate you or terrify you. The world is watching. Other chosen ones who are still in their tests. They're looking for proof that it's possible to make it through. Broken people who've lost hope. They're searching for evidence that God still cares. A generation that's forgotten how to believe. They're desperate for someone who carries the real thing. You are their proof. You are the answer to prayers they haven't even prayed yet. You are the miracle they need to see with their own eyes. 1 Peter 2-9 declares it over you right now. You are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of Him who called you out of darkness into His wonderful light. You are not just chosen, you are royal. You are not just saved. You are set apart. You are not just forgiven. You are favored with a purpose so significant that hell trembles when you wake up in the morning. So stop hiding, stop shrinking, stop apologizing for the glory you carry. The test is over. The transformation is complete. The proof is undeniable. You are the living evidence that God still moves. You are the walking testimony that faith still works. You are the breathing miracle that love still wins. And if your spirit is burning right now, if every word is hitting like lightning in your soul, then don't stay silent. Let heaven know you're awake. Let the spiritual realm hear your declaration.